Yeah, no, we're not doing the costume yet. We're not starting the Halloween stuff until the next video. Okay? Yeah. All right. Hey everybody, it's Dave and Olive. Thanks for joining us here at Book Blather. We talk about the books we've read recently to help spread the joy of reading. So October is here, and so that means we're going to be doing our short Halloween books series again. That seemed to be a bit of a hit last year, where throughout the month of October we read short Halloween books as we went and reviewed them as we went, and people seemed to like that series. So we're going to be doing that again this year. But right before we do that, we first have to do our latest When We're Ready wrap up to talk about the couple of books that we just finished. So we are still reading The Chunker. Those of you that are wondering, we did not give up. We will finish that. We're just slow readers, so we're working on it. We'll get there. But in the meantime, we finished three more books that we want to talk about. So this month was a little bit strange. This was, in terms of reading, it ended up being a very disturbing month. So we'll jump right into it. So the first one that we read is Zombie by Joyce Carol Oates. Now this, so I just say right off the bat, so didn't really like this book. I feel a little bit funny criticizing this book because, as a lot of people know, Joyce Carol Oates is a famous author. She is a professor that teaches writing. She has written many books, won many awards. She's been a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize a number of times. And this book itself actually won the Bram Stoker Award. So obviously we're not saying that Joyce Carol Oates is not a great writer. Obviously she is. It was just, well, this is, I mean, this was actually our first experience with her, but obviously she must be a very talented writer. We just didn't like this. It's just this book. We just didn't like this one. So what is this? We went into this not knowing too much what it was about, and I don't want to say too much about it because I was actually a little surprised by something, and that was, I'm glad I didn't know that going in. So maybe I should have, but I didn't. So I don't want to ruin that for anybody else. But basically, it follows this very troubled young man that has. You see a little bit early on with some of his troubles that he had and his interactions with his family, but then basically he is, he's a very violent individual who does some very violent things, and the book is based on it's based on Jeffrey Dahmer, I guess. Jeffrey Dahmer was the inspiration for it. If you don't know who Jeffrey Dahmer is, he was a serial killer mostly in the 80s, and he was finally caught in the early 90s. But he was the worst among serial killers. He killed a bunch of men. Would lure them back to his place, but he would also do, in addition, he didn't just kill them. He engaged in he would dismember them, engage in cannibalism, some necrophilia, really bad stuff. And so he was caught in the early 90s, sent to prison, and then he was killed there shortly after he got there. So, but I would say it was supposedly Joyce Carol Oates based this on him. I would say it was maybe inspired by him because this character wasn't exactly like Jeffrey Dahmer, but he was very troubled and very violent, I guess, like Jeffrey Dahmer. It's just he didn't quite do all the exact same things, but. So it basically follows him as he is. It's a very extreme book. It's very violent. So there are some number of very violent scenes, sexually explicit scenes. And so we can deal with extreme books and violent books. That generally doesn't bother us. And there was a couple of those last year that we read that we really enjoyed. So that wasn't why we didn't like this. It wasn't because of the subject matter. But we just there was a number of things that I didn't like about it, actually. The main thing is we could never really get used to the narrative style. I totally get that it was supposed to be, you're supposed to be seeing things from this guy Quentin's perspective. And so it's, you're supposed to be seeing this sort of troubled, disorganized mind. But it was just, I just couldn't get used to it. It was like, it was a lot of just really like, just a lot of like disjointed writing, and a lot of just like use of caps and ampersands, and just very choppy. And it was like, I found it very irritating, even though I kind of understood why it was written that way. So I assume none of other Joyce Carol Oates stuff is written in that fashion. I think that was specifically for this novel. But I don't know. I just really didn't like it. I felt like it could have been done a different way. It also didn't really feel like, I didn't feel like the book resolved well. I mean, it almost felt like, early in the book, it was kind of, it's not a long book. This version is 175 pages, or 180 pages. There's a much nicer newer version that I'll put up on the screen. But even though it's not that long, it was like some of the beginning was kind of slow moving, and you were kind of wondering what some of the point of it was. Well, I guess it was kind of to illustrate, why some of the reasons why he ends up behaving the way that he does. But I don't. But then at the end, didn't really resolve well. It was almost like, it's kind of just stopped writing. And it didn't really seem like like the book was like got wrapped up properly. So, I mean, it wasn't, I don't know, I guess I wouldn't say it was horrible, but there wasn't a lot about it that I liked. I really didn't like this very much, but obviously a lot of people do disagree. It won the Bram Stoker Award, but I will say that we read this as a group read, and so there was about 5 or 6 of us that read this, and actually most people in the group read did not like it. I mean, the opinions weren't unanimous, but most people didn't like it. So, so I don't know. That's that's basically, it is what it is. You can you take that and decide whether you think it might be for you or not. Okay, the next book that we read is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. This is a very recent book. It was published earlier this year in 2022. And this is a science fiction horror. What this book was about it's about a crew that is on a spaceship, a little ship that goes and repairs beacons, out on the edges of traveled space. And they're right at the edge of, I think it's called the comm web or something like that, where you can communicate with these ships. And it's a small crew of 5 that is led by a relatively weak leader. Her name is Claire, and this is their final mission. And she is sort of this. She is basically going to be retired after this, and she has not been happy with her life so far, and she's not very happy about the fact that this is going to be the end of her career, and so she's really kind of in the dumps about this. And in the course of this final mission, they receive a distress signal. And they're very far away from everything else, so they go to check out what this is, and they discover that it is this luxury space liner called the Aurora that had gone missing without a trace 20 years before that. Had all sorts of rich people and celebrities on it, and it had just suddenly vanished without a trace. And so now, all of a sudden, here it is. So they can't raise anybody in the ship, so they go to check it out, and essentially the ship is just it's basically disabled. It's disabled, and everybody on the ship is dead. And so they obviously this is a great find, because it's they're solving a mystery here, and it's also worth an incredible amount of money to them if they can successfully bring the ship back. And so basically that's what it kind of launches. It's told in 2 different timelines. Some of this you're seeing Claire, in a future time where she's reflecting back on this, and some of it is the crew's time on the ship. And then those timelines kind of come together, and then you see some of what happens later afterwards. So there is good plot progression throughout this story. I think it's multiple different phases, and if you like those kind of multiple timelines with not flashbacks, but where you're going back and forth, which we do. It was pretty cool. I thought the way the narrative was set up for this book, and it was a bit scary. I'd characterize this as really it was a cross between like psychological and supernatural horror, because Claire has somewhat of a troubled past, and so a lot of this story is about the war that's going on in her own psyche, and she I don't want to give too much away about the story, but a lot of it is is her. Is basically her past and her psychological state, coming, kind of doing battle with the actual, stuff that they're encountering on the ship. And so I don't want to say too much more than that, but there were parts that were pretty, it wasn't the scariest book in the world, but there were parts that were pretty creepy, and it was really neat, this sort of interplay between, constantly issues of what's real, and so I thought it was I really enjoyed this book. Actually, it wasn't it wasn't a 5-star read, and it wasn't one of those don't expect there to be like some incredibly awesome science fiction resolution to the thing at the end. There's closure, and there's resolution to the story and everything, but it wasn't like anything crazy, but it was it was pretty good. So like I said, it wasn't a 5-star read, but it was an enjoyable one. We would recommend it. I had a good time with it, and so we'll leave it at that so we don't spoil anything else, but that was a pretty good book. And then the last one we read was this book, Womb by Duncan Ralston. This was published by, I probably forgot to say with the other ones, but this was published by Shadowwork Publishing in 2016. And we read this book because it was sent to us by our good friend Pax Panic, who, if you don't know who Pax Panic is, you probably do if you watch this channel, but if not, you should definitely go check her out. She does a lot of horror. And so she sent us this one. This is, as it says right on the bottom, an extreme horror novel. And so this book was a bit unusual because this book was really, really extreme. And so it's set. It's a very clever title. This title, Womb, I thought. And it's basically, the main setting is a particular room in a motel, I think, a hotel or motel, I think. And there's this particular room, and the main characters are this guy that books the room, and then he books basically a prostitute to come. And they end up telling a number of different stories to each other. So the book is kind of like a collection of short stories, but it's all wrapped together within this room and these two individuals that are telling the stories. And so all of these stories were so I haven't read a ton of extreme stuff, but I have read some at this point. What's up? What's about? I know I know this book was a little too much, but yeah, I'll have some opinions about this. But the book was so there's a lot of violence and a lot of sex, and it was all of the most extreme nature, each of the stories, and the when I was reading this, it was like, so extreme stuff doesn't really like bother me. People be like, oh, they it made them sick, or they couldn't it was making them physically uncomfortable. I don't get physically uncomfortable usually from stuff. There's just words on the page. To me, it's not like watching a movie. Like, it usually doesn't bother me. This is one of those rare occasions where when I was actually reading one of the stories, I was literally like moving on the couch like this, because it literally made me physically uncomfortable that I kept having to shift myself on the couch. It was that extreme. And so some parts were worse than others, but it was definitely like the most uncomfortable stuff that I've read. That never happens to me. It made me think of years ago. I read this story called Guts by Chuck Palahniuk. Yeah, I think I pronounced it right. I think I finally got it right. And he, author of Fight Club and some other famous ones. But he had written a story called Guts, and that ended up appearing in a novel later called Haunted that has a bunch of different stories in it. But it first appeared in magazine form, which I read it many, many years ago. And when you look it up, you're going to see it appeared in magazine form in Playboy. That's not where I read it. It was in a different magazine. It was like it might have been a UK magazine. It was like a New Yorker style magazine that I picked up on eBay because I was already a Chuck Palahniuk fan at that point. And but that story Guts was like, I remember that story making me feel that way, where he would go around on readings for that, and people would faint at these different events when he would read it, because it literally made people, it had a physical effect on people. So it made me think of that when I was reading this one, because there was especially that one part where it, like, again, made me like, never happens to me, but it like made me physically uncomfortable, just like that one did. So a couple things. This was pretty good. I would recommend it. It was, if you like that kind of subject matter. When I tell you it is like super extreme, it's super extreme. So if you don't like that, this is not a book for you. But if you can handle that, it was definitely engaging read for sure. Even if it was just like for the shock value, but a little more than that. I mean, the book was decently written. It wasn't that well written, but that's kind of hard to judge because so much of it was in dialogue, so you can't really judge the prose too much when a lot of it is in dialogue from these characters. But it wasn't perfect, and there were some errors, even though it's not self-published, Shadowwork Publishing. There were some grammatical errors and things in there, but it was fine. It wasn't distracting or anything. It was decently written. I will say also that I thought it was pretty interesting the way I thought Ralston did a good job with bringing all of the things, all the stuff kind of connected and was all brought together. And I thought I thought that was pretty good when you think of it in the context that this was a bunch of stories that almost seemed like they're being presented for shock value, but it was, I think that no doubt took some ingenuity and talent to take a bunch of stories like that and create this sort of quilt out of that kind of story. I don't know what you say. Yeah, like a quilt of stories that all came together in this pretty interesting way. So I thought that was pretty neat. Once I got to the end and was thinking about that, I thought that was pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, we did, and like I said, you have to decide whether this is the type of book for you, but we did enjoy it. And so anyway, so that's it. Those are the three books we read: Zombie by Joyce Carol Oates, Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes, and Womb by Duncan Ralston. So now we're going to be doing our Halloween series. Like I said, a short Halloween books coming up. Help everybody have a good Halloween season. I had mentioned we had read Zombie as part of the as a group read. So Olive and I set up a Discord now. It's not meant to be a full Discord, but it's really just because we had a number of group reads we were scheduling. So it was really just to have chats for the group reads. So those are the channels that you'll see on the Discord. If you're interested in that, the link is below. We have already scheduled for November. A few of us are going to be doing No Exit, and in December, for Christmas season, we're going to be doing Snow Child. So if you're interested, hit the link below, and we'll see you on there. So otherwise, thanks so much for watching. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so that you get notified the next time Olive says it's okay to upload another video. We'll see you soon. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and We'll see you next time.